In 2017, the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German shook Delphi, Indiana. Years later, Richard Allen was arrested and convicted. But what we're going to look at is what if systemic factors and unconscious bias, coupled with social pressures, played a role in how investigators built the case. Because investigators often form early ideas about their suspect, and factors like proximity, appearance, and local reputation can unintentionally shape that choice. And once a narrative is in place, every observation is filtered through it, a psychological process they call tunnel vision. For example, the cartridge was the only item they said that was tied to Allen and the murders, but there was no DNA, no fingerprints, no blood evidence, and the weapon that they recovered couldn't be proven absolutely to have been used in the crime. Others couldn't be ruled out. It was almost as if the forensic report coloured the investigation. The police could have relied on the tool mark analysis, and then they interpreted ambiguous evidence too strongly and developed tunnel vision with regard to Allen as their suspect. And this is a form of bias, in my own personal opinion. There could also have been some timeline compression bias. This is when ambiguous time data can appear more precise than it is. For example, phone pings could have been interpreted loosely, and vague witness statements were used and then reframed to fit the narrative, as well as Allen's proximity, and then overall it implied an overlap with the crime window. Now, police rarely invent witnesses, but what they can do is interview them repeatedly or ask them leading questions. And if you show photos and descriptions, that can also influence witness memory. For example, was the man you saw wearing a blue jacket like this one? So over time, the witness's memories can shift to match the investigation narrative, which then feeds into the unconscious bias and tunnel vision present in this case. And when charges are filed, it continues. Prosecutors will tend to defend the case aggressively, and then weak evidence can get framed as cumulative. Contradictions become minimised, and then alternative suspects get excluded. This is called institutional momentum, and it can serve to further lock in the false narrative. So then this becomes what they call a cascade failure, where the investigators become convinced that Allen is the bridge guy, and all the ambiguous evidence gets interpreted to fit that belief over other potential candidates. Forensic analysis, as a result, then gets overstated. Contradictory witness information then is minimised, which then leads to an entire jury hearing a coherent story built from weak links. And this is how many other wrongful convictions have occurred in the past. And this creates fertile ground for doubt. Most wrongful convictions are caused by human bias, institutional pressure, and flawed forensic traditions, and overconfident storytelling in court. It makes it harder to detect and harder to fix. In high-pressure investigations, small errors, selective attention, or minor miscommunication can accumulate in complex systems, and it all combines to create the appearance of guilt, even if the intent to do so was absent. And then media coverage shapes the public perception and feedback into investigations. Symbolic representations, such as images, nicknames, and viral theories, can all influence what evidence is prioritised and how narratives are interpreted and relayed to the public. This was stated to Richard Allen when he was interrogated. He was told that the media would paint him as a monster. Words and statements can be powerful evidence, but even those are not immune to contamination. Stress, suggestive questioning, and exposure to known details can create statements that appear to be self-generated. Sociology and psychologically, well-intentioned environments can inadvertently shape a suspect's narrative, let alone a pre-trial detainee kept in solitary in a cell under safekeeping order. Statements uttered when the defendant is being treated for psychosis are contaminated. Admissibility is highly subject to challenge based on reliability, fairness, and mental capacity, especially if the defendant was induced to speak through techniques that took advantage of their vulnerability. A person with active psychosis may, when reading legal documents, internalise them and fabricate or distort facts, making any statements rendered unreliable and potentially prejudicial. From a sociological perspective, unconscious bias, social pressure, media influence, and cascade failure are all systemic factors that shape investigations. Understanding these dynamics helps explain how a case can build a narrative that frames someone. Studying these patterns improves justice systems and highlights the need for checks against human and institutional error. Like and subscribe for more insights into sociology and criminal justice. Thank you.